There's a quiet rhythm that runs beneath everything you've lived through, every triumph, every heartbreak, every moment of stillness you mistook for nothing at all. It is the hum of life's deeper order, guiding you even when you thought you were lost. Your thoughts are not just passing clouds. They are the architects of the reality you inhabit. Your energy is not merely spent. It is woven thread by thread into the fabric of the person you are becoming. The obstacles you face are not detours. They are invitations, whispers from the universe, urging you to turn inward, to reclaim the power you scatter in 1,000 directions. If you listen closely, even silence speaks, and even chaos carries a hidden symmetry. You are not drifting. You are being carried, and every step, whether in light or shadow, is part of a design so precise it could only belong to the infinite. Most of us go through life thinking we're reacting to it. Something happens. We respond. Somebody says something. We feel a certain way. A challenge shows up. We either rise or crumble, and we think that's just how it works. The world happens, and we're along for the ride. But if you slow down long enough, really slow down, you start to notice something fascinating. Before you do anything, before you feel anything, there's a thought, a sentence in your head, a picture. Sometimes it's so quick you miss it entirely, and yet that thought is steering the whole ship. Most people don't see it. They don't hear it. They're so caught in the noise that they don't realize there's this silent architect constantly designing their reality from the shadows. That architect is your mind. Not the big obvious part that says, I should call my mom or I need to pay my bills. I'm talking about the quiet, automatic part. The part that's been shaped by years of experiences, by tiny little moments you've long forgotten, but that left fingerprints on your wiring. This architect is building the blueprint of your life without asking for your permission. And unless you learn to recognize it, you'll keep living in a house you never consciously designed. I'll give you an example. Let's say you walk into a room and instantly you feel nervous. Your chest tightens, your palms sweat. You don't know why. You just assume it's the situation. But here's what really happened. In the blink of an eye, your mind reached back into its archives, pulled out a memory of something that felt similar, attached a meaning to it, and fired off an emotional signal. And now you're living in the emotion as if it's fact, as if it's the only possible truth. But here's the kicker. None of it is permanent. None of it is inevitable. You can learn to notice the architect at work. And once you notice it, you can redraw the plans. Think about that for a second. What if every single emotion you feel, every single decision you make, every single limit you believe about yourself was just one possible draft? What if you could pick up the pencil and sketch something completely different? That's where control begins. Not control in the rigid, white-knuckle sense, but in the way a musician controls a melody. Listen, you understand the rhythm, and then you choose how to play it. It starts with awareness. And awareness doesn't mean you force your mind to be quiet. It means you create enough space to hear it. You start catching those sentences. I'm not good enough. I always screw this up. People will laugh at me. And instead of letting them slide by like background noise, you shine a light on them. Sometimes that light will reveal beliefs that don't even belong to you. They were handed down from your parents, your teachers, from a culture that told you how you should be. And suddenly you realize you've been living by someone else's script. When you see that, you can't unsee it. And that's a beautiful thing, because the moment you become aware you have choice to interrupt it, choice to replace it, choice to rewrite the blueprint entirely. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. At first, it feels awkward. You'll catch yourself in the middle of an old thought and think, wow, there I go again. You'll want to rush past it. But that discomfort, that's the sound of the architect's tools hitting the floor. That's the moment the automatic patterns start to loosen their grip. And then something shifts. You start seeing space where before there was only reaction. Someone criticizes you, and instead of spiraling into shame, you pause. You breathe. You ask yourself, is this true? Does it belong to me? Or is this just another draft from the same old blueprint?
Little by little, you reclaim the pen. The funny thing is, life itself doesn't necessarily get easier right away.
The challenges still show up. People still say.
What they say.
Circumstances still twist and turn, but you stop being pushed around by the first wave of thought. You start choosing which ones to ride and which ones to let pass. And here's the part that still amazes me. When you start noticing your own thoughts, you start noticing the ones that never belong to you at all. You realize you've been carrying other people's fears, their limitations, their unexamined beliefs, and without even knowing it, you've been building your house with their bricks. When you finally see that, you can put them down. You can go back to the raw materials of your own truth. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about coming home to yourself. The self that existed before all the noise, before the conditioning, before you believed you were small. And if you remember nothing else from this moment, remember this. Every thought is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. You may not have painted the first picture, but you get to decide if you keep it hanging or if you start again. The silent architect will always be there. The question is, will you let it design your life by default, or will you wake up, take the pen, and draw something worth living in? You've started to notice the architect, right? The thoughts that were quietly shaping everything without you realizing it. Now here's the next layer, and this one changes everything. Where your mind goes, your energy follows. Always. It's like your attention is this invisible current, and whatever you plug it into starts to light up. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, helpful or destructive. If you feed it your attention, you're giving it your energy. And energy is life force. It's the fuel you've got for the day, for your dreams, for your relationships, for your growth. The problem is most of us are running on empty, not because we don't have enough energy, but because we're spending it in all the wrong places. Think about it. How many times have you been exhausted at the end of the day without doing anything physically demanding? You didn't run a marathon, but your brain did. You replayed the same worry 47 times. You obsessed over what someone meant in a text message. You imagined 5 different worst-case scenarios that never happened. And each one drained you a little bit more. Energy leaks are sneaky. They hide in habits you don't question. Conversations you know won't go anywhere, and mental loops that serve no purpose other than to keep you busy inside your own head. And here's the dangerous part. You get so used to feeling drained that you forget what it's like to feel alive. If you really think about it, your energy is like money. Imagine if you got a paycheck every morning. Your full tank of attention, your focus, your creativity, your motivation. And without realizing it, you spend half of it before breakfast, a little here on self-doubt, a little there on replaying an argument from last week. By the time you get to the stuff that actually matters, your work, your dreams, your people, you're broke. So the real question becomes, what are you funding with your energy? Because if your thoughts are the architect, your energy is the construction crew. You can have the most beautiful blueprint in the world, but if your workers are tired, distracted, and scattered across 10 different jobs, nothing gets built. The truth is, energy is always going somewhere. If you don't direct it with intention, it will get hijacked by whatever's loudest, most urgent, or most emotionally charged in your environment. And most of the time, that's not the stuff that moves you forward. It's the stuff that keeps you spinning. This is why learning to manage your attention is one of the most powerful skills you'll ever develop. It's not about being positive all the time. It's about being deliberate, choosing where you place your focus, asking yourself, is this thought, this activity, this person, a deposit or a withdrawal? When you start living this way, you begin to notice the trade-offs. Maybe staying in that argument feels justified in the moment, but the withdrawal from your emotional account isn't worth it. Maybe giving 2 hours to scrolling isn't evil, but the deposit you could have made into your dream project during that time is far more valuable. Redirecting energy doesn't mean you never deal with problems. It means you don't let them become your main investment. You acknowledge them, you handle them, and then you bring your attention back to the places where growth is possible. And here's the beautiful thing. Energy is renewable. Every time you make a choice that aligns with what matters most to you, you get some back. Every time you stop feeding a thought that drags you down, you get some back. Every time you pour your focus into something meaningful, you create momentum, and momentum generates even more energy. It's like tuning an instrument. At first, it's all over the place, out of key, inconsistent, frustrating. But once you start adjusting it, even slightly, you hear the change. You feel it. And suddenly, the music of your life starts sounding clearer, stronger, more intentional. I've seen people turn their entire lives around just by changing where they put their attention. Not because the outside world magically got easier, but because their inside world stopped bleeding energy on things that didn't deserve it. You have that same power. The power to stop being the victim of every passing distraction, every emotional trigger, every piece of noise in your environment. The power to fund the future you want instead of the fears you don't. And the moment you start thinking about your energy this way as something sacred, something worth protecting, you start living differently. You choose your conversations differently. You filter what you consume differently. You spend your mornings differently because you know every drop of that energy is either building your life or building something you don't want to live in. The architect in your mind can sketch a masterpiece, but it will only exist if you give your energy to the construction of it, not to the distractions that keep you from ever laying the first brick. And so the challenge is simple. Notice where you're spending your life force. Ask yourself if the investment is worth it. And then little by little, redirect it toward what you want to create. Because at the end of the day, energy is all you've got. And where you spend it is where your life will grow. The more you start reframing challenges, the more you realize something incredible. There's a pattern. It's not random. The obstacles you've faced, the people you've met, the moments that broke you, and the moments that lifted you, they weren't just scattered pieces. They fit together. It's almost like life has been weaving this invisible thread through everything you've ever experienced. You couldn't see it at the time. In fact, in the middle of some of those seasons, you probably thought life had forgotten you completely. But when you look back with a little distance, there's this undeniable symmetry. Things that didn't make sense then make perfect sense now. Doors that closed were actually steering you toward the right ones. The delays, the detours, the heartbreaks, they weren't just interruptions. They were part of the design. And here's the thing, once you start to notice that, it changes how you move through the world. You stop treating every moment as isolated, and you start seeing it as part of a bigger unfolding. Now, I'm not saying everything that happens is pleasant or easy. I'm saying everything that happens has a place in the architecture of your life. There's a higher order at work. Call it the universe, God, the divine, fate, whatever resonates with you. But it's there. A rhythm that doesn't always match your timing, but always matches your growth. The problem is we spend so much of our energy trying to control every detail that we forget we're not the only ones in the equation. We cling to plans, to timelines, to the idea that things should unfold exactly the way we pictured them. And when they don't, we call it failure. But what if it's not failure at all? What if it's the exact redirection you needed, even if it feels uncomfortable? Think about the moments in your life where you were forced to let go. You didn't want to. You resisted. You fought. But when you finally stopped gripping so hard, something else showed up. Something you couldn't have planned, but in hindsight, you wouldn't trade for anything. That's alignment. That's the higher order at work. When you start living in alignment with that rhythm, you spend less time forcing and more time flowing. You stop trying to push the river and instead learn how to move with it. Here's what's wild. When you're aligned, you start noticing synchronicities. The right person calls you at the right time. The resource you needed shows up in the most unexpected place. A conversation you almost didn't have ends up shifting everything. Some people write these off as coincidences, but I think they're reminders, signals that you're on the path you're meant to be on. And alignment isn't about everything going smoothly. Duh. Nah. Alignment means you're exactly where you're supposed to be, even when it's hard, even when you can't see the next step, even when nothing looks the way you thought it would. Because here's the truth. It works on the schedule of your becoming. That's why trust becomes so important. Trust isn't just believing things will work out. It's knowing that even the things that don't seem to be working out are still part of something bigger. It's choosing to stay open, to stay curious, even when you don't have all the answers. When you operate from that place, the way you handle challenges changes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this moving me toward? That shift alone can take you from feeling powerless to feeling deeply connected, not just to your own life, but to life itself. And the more you practice this, the more you realize alignment isn't something you force. It's something you listen for. It's a conversation between you and the bigger picture. It's paying attention to what lights you up, what drains you, what doors open effortlessly, and which ones you have to break yourself to keep open. You already know what it feels like to be out of alignment. It's the exhaustion, the frustration, the sense that no matter how hard you push, you're moving against the current. And you've also tasted alignment. Those moments where things just click, where time disappears, where you feel like you're exactly where you need to be. The invitation is to notice the difference and choose accordingly. And yes, there will be seasons where alignment means slowing down, pausing, waiting. This is where stillness comes back into play. When you're not filling every second with noise, you can actually hear the guidance that's been there all along. You don't have to figure it all out at once. You just have to take the next aligned step, and then the next. You're then, and then the next. Because when you live in alignment with the higher order, you stop needing the whole map before you move forward. You trust the path will reveal itself as you walk it. And that's when life stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like a dance. And when you start living in alignment, something beautiful happens. Your life begins to feel more connected, more purposeful. But that doesn't mean you stop feeling big emotions. You're still human. You'll still get angry, frustrated, jealous, overwhelmed. And here's the truth. Those emotions aren't the problem. It's what you do with them that determines whether they carry you forward or pull you under. Think of your emotions like powerful rivers. When they're flowing in the right direction, they can generate incredible momentum. But when they overflow, when they're left unchecked, they can erode the ground beneath you and take you places you never meant to go. Most people either get swept away by their emotions or they try to dam them up completely. They either explode without thinking, saying, or doing things they regret, or they shut it all down, bottling it up until it seeps out in ways they can't control. Neither works. The key isn't suppression or surrender, it's redirection. Here's what I mean. Every emotion carries energy. Anger has energy. Fear has energy. Even sadness has energy. That energy is raw power. If you can catch it before it turns into destructive action, you can channel it into something that serves you instead of sabotaging you. Think about the last time you were really frustrated. That tightness in your chest, that heat in your face, that's fuel. If you let it loose without direction, it'll burn bridges, hurt relationships, derail progress. But if you take a breath, pause, and decide where to put it, that same frustration can become determination. It can push you to have a hard but necessary conversation. It can motivate you to change a system that isn't working. It can drive you to finally take the leap you've been avoiding. The same is true with fear. Left unchecked, fear paralyzes you. Redirected, fear sharpens your focus. It makes you prepare better. It forces you to pay attention. It becomes the push that gets you ready for the leap instead of the chain that keeps you from it. Even sadness can be redirected. Sadness slows you down, but sometimes slowing down is exactly what you need. It makes you notice what you care about. It can deepen your empathy for others. It can remind you what truly matters so you can reorient your energy toward it. The skill is in catching the current early. That's where all the work you've done up to this point comes in. Noticing the architect in your mind, protecting your energy, finding stillness, reframing challenges, and aligning with a higher order. Those steps create the awareness you need to notice when an emotion first rises instead of after it's already taken over. It's like seeing a wave far out in the ocean instead of waiting until it's crashing over your head. When you spot it early, you can decide how you're going to ride it. You can ask, what is this feeling telling me? Where is this energy trying to go? How can I aim it towards something that builds instead of something that breaks? And here's the part people forget. Emotions are temporary. They're meant to move. That's why we call them feelings. They flow through, but they only move if you don't get stuck in them. Redirecting them isn't about denying how you feel. It's about using that energy while it's fresh, instead of letting it harden into resentment, anxiety, or despair. And the more you practice this, the more you'll notice patterns. You'll see that certain situations always trigger certain emotions. You'll learn the difference between a wave that's worth riding and one that's better to let pass. You'll start catching yourself in that tiny space between feeling and action. And in that space, you'll find your power. Sometimes redirection looks active, channeling your frustration into a workout, your nervousness, an EDB, extra preparation, your sadness into creating something meaningful. Other times, redirection looks quiet, stepping away from a heated conversation, taking a walk to clear your head, giving yourself the gift of perspective before you respond. And it's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about creating momentum. When you stop letting emotions control you, you start using them as fuel. Imagine if every burst of anger became a push toward change, if every flicker of jealousy became a reminder of what you want to build. If every drop of fear became a signal. That's the difference between being at the mercy of your feelings and being the captain of them. But let me be clear, this isn't about perfection. You will still get swept away sometimes. You will still say things you wish you could take back. You will still have moments where the current gets the best of you. That's okay. The goal isn't to never fall. It's to recover faster, to notice sooner, to redirect more often than you react. Over time, you start to realize something powerful. Emotions aren't here to punish you. They're here to guide you. They're signals, not sentences. They're energy in motion, waiting for you to decide where they go. And when you learn to guide that current, your life starts moving in the direction you've chosen, not just the direction your emotions were pulling you in the heat of the moment. Because in the end, you can't control every wave that hits you, but you can always choose how you ride it. So you've started to see the architect at work in your mind. You've started noticing where your energy is leaking and begun redirecting it toward what actually matters. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Because once you've stopped scattering your energy, you have to decide what to do with the space you've created. And most people don't know what to do with space. We're used to noise, constant motion, that low hum of mental static that makes us feel like we're doing something even when we're not. So when life gives us quiet, when there's a pause in the action, we tend to fill it. We grab our phones, make up problems to solve, replay old conversations, check our email for the 100th time. Anything to avoid being still. But here's the truth. Mental stillness isn't just the absence of thought. It's the soil where clarity grows. Without it, your mind keeps recycling the same patterns. With it, you start to see possibilities you couldn't see before. Not because they weren't there, but because the noise was too loud to notice them. Think about a snow globe. Shake it, and all those little flakes swirl in chaos. That's your mind most of the time. Ideas, fears, to-do lists, past regrets, future worries, all spinning at once. But if you stop shaking it and just let it be, the snow starts to settle. And only then can you see what's inside clearly and without distortion. Stillness is how you stop shaking your own snow globe. Now, this doesn't mean you have to sit cross-legged on a mountaintop and meditate for hours every day, unless you want to. Stillness can be as simple as taking a few minutes to step outside, feeling your feet on the ground, noticing your breath, and not reaching for anything to distract yourself. And at first, it might feel uncomfortable, even boring. That's because you're not used to it. Your brain has been wired for constant stimulation. And when you take that away, it will start throwing all kinds of thoughts at you to pull you back into the chaos. That's normal. It's just your mind doing what it's trained to do. But if you stay with it, if you let the noise come and go without chasing it, something incredible happens. You start to notice the space between thoughts. That space is where the magic lives. It's where you connect to your intuition. It's where ideas drop in out of nowhere, where solutions to problems suddenly appear fully formed. It's where you remember what you truly care about, without all the static telling you what you should care about. And here's the paradox. Stillness isn't passive. It's one of the most active, life-shaping states you can be in. Because when you allow your mind to rest, you're not shutting down. You're tuning in. You're aligning yourself with something deeper, something that's been trying to guide you all along. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in history happened in moments of stillness. Einstein wasn't scribbling equations every second. He famously talked about imagining himself riding on a beam of light while daydreaming. Newton saw the laws of gravity while sitting under a tree. Stillness creates the space for insight to land. And in your own life, you've probably experienced this without realizing it. Ever notice how your best ideas often come in the shower, on a walk, or right before falling asleep? That's because you've given your brain a break from its usual loops. And in that space, clarity has room to enter. The challenge is to stop treating those moments as accidents and start creating them intentionally. So here's what happens when you practice mental stillness regularly. Your baseline stress level drops. You stop reacting to every little thing that happens around you. Your thoughts slow down enough for you to actually choose which ones to follow. And perhaps most importantly, you become more present. Being present isn't about ignoring the past or future. It's about being fully in the moment you're in, which, by the way, is the only place your life is actually happening. When you're present, your energy isn't scattered across 100 different timelines. It's here, focused, available for whatever matters most. And remember, stillness doesn't have to be a grand production. It can be a deep breath before you answer the phone, a pause before you respond to that text, 5 quiet minutes before you start your day. Those tiny pockets of space are like little investments that pay massive dividends in clarity and focus. Now, let's be real. You're not going to live in a permanent state of stillness. Life will always have noise. But the difference is you'll know how to return to that quiet center inside you whenever you need it. It's like having a reset button you can press anytime. And once you have that, you stop getting swept away by every passing wave. You start responding instead of reacting. You start choosing instead of being carried along. And slowly, the life you're building becomes one you're actually living, not just surviving. Because here's the thing. If the mind is the architect and your energy is the crew, then stillness is the blueprint table. It's where you step back, take a breath, and make sure you're building what you actually want, not just what you've been conditioned to build. When you give yourself the gift of stillness, you stop being a prisoner of your own thoughts, and you start becoming the master of them. And that's when life stops feeling like something that's happening to you and starts feeling like something you're creating on purpose. The moment you start finding stillness, something interesting happens. You begin to see your life with a little more clarity. The noise quiets down, and suddenly, the problems that used to feel like tidal waves look more like ripples. Not because they've disappeared, but because you're seeing them from a different place. And here's the truth. Challenges aren't going anywhere. Life will keep handing them to you. Sometimes small ones, sometimes the kind that knock the air out of your lungs. And for a long time, most of us have been taught to see them as enemies, as roadblocks keeping us from the life we want. But what if that's not the whole story? What if every single challenge is actually a messenger? What if it's not there to stop you, but to shape you? We like to think growth happens in the good times, when everything's smooth, when the sun is shining and doors are opening. But if you look back on your own life, the moments that changed you the most, weren't they usually the hard ones? The heartbreak that taught you what you truly value, The failure that forced you to develop skills you didn't know you had. The setback that pushed you in a direction you never would have chosen, but that ended up being exactly where you needed to go. The human mind loves comfort, but the human spirit grows in friction. And when you see that, you stop resisting every difficulty as if it's an interruption. You start to meet it with curiosity. You start asking, what is it trying to teach me? It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about changing the frame you look through so the picture looks different. You can't always control what's happening, but you can control the meaning you attach to it. And that meaning changes how you move through it. Here's the thing most people miss. Challenges are neutral until you give them a label. The same event that breaks one person can build another. The difference isn't the event. It's the interpretation. Imagine holding a stone in your hand. You could see it as a weight that drags you down or as a tool to build with. Same stone. Different frame. I've seen people go through things so devastating you'd think it would destroy them. And instead, it woke them up. It stripped away all the illusions, all the noise, and left them standing face to face with who they really are. And from that place, they rebuilt, stronger and more aligned than before. When you start reframing challenges, you begin to understand that life is not happening to you. It's happening for you. I know that can sound cliche, but think about it. Every difficulty carries information you wouldn't have gotten any other way. It forces you to adapt, to stretch, to become more than you were before. And the wild thing is, sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come disguised as breakdowns. You lose the job, and it pushes you toward the career you were meant for. The relationship ends, and it clears space for someone who actually matches your soul. The plan falls apart, and you discover you were meant for something bigger than the plan. But you can only see that if you stop fixating on the pain long enough to look for the purpose. And that's where stillness comes back in. When you create that inner quiet, you give yourself enough distance from the challenge to actually see what it's trying to show you. You move from reaction to reflection, and in that space, you find power. It's like a sculptor with a block of marble. Every challenge is just another chisel strike. At first, all you feel is the impact, the blow, the sharpness, the discomfort. But over time, you start to see the shape that's emerging, and it's you, the truest version of you, carved by every challenge you've survived. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. In the middle of a storm, it's hard to remember that the rain is feeding the soil. But if you can hold on to that truth, even in small moments, you'll find a resilience you didn't know you had. And here's the real payoff. When you start to see challenges as teachers, you stop fearing them so much. You stop living your life in a bubble, trying to avoid anything that might hurt. Instead, you meet life head on, knowing that whatever comes, you can work with it, you can learn from it, you can use it. And that's when you stop just surviving your life and start shaping it. Because if the mind is the architect and your energy is the crew and stillness is the blueprint table, then challenges, they're the raw materials. And you get to decide what you build with them. The obstacle is never just the obstacle. It's also the doorway. You know, we spend so much time searching for these big aha moments, the massive breakthroughs that change everything overnight. But here's the truth. Transformation doesn't happen in the giant leaps you take once in a blue moon. It happens in the quiet, unglamorous daily moments when you choose to be present instead of distracted, intentional instead of reactive. You can have all the self-awareness in the world, but if you don't ground it in daily practice, it fades. You can experience the biggest epiphany, but without a habit to back it up, it's like trying to hold water in your hands. It just slips away. That's why we have to talk about building presence into your life like it's oxygen. Not something you tap into when things get hard, but something you breathe moment to moment. Now, presence isn't just about sitting in meditation for an hour with your eyes closed. It's not about joining a monastery or living in silence for a week. Those things can be great, but presence is something far more practical. It's the art of noticing your life while you're actually living it. It's catching yourself on autopilot and saying, nope, I'm choosing to be here right now. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think they need to carve out huge blocks of time to practice presence. But life doesn't usually hand you an extra hour with a pretty bow on it. What you do get are small, hidden opportunities sprinkled throughout your day. The moment before you answer a text, the pause before you open that email, the space between someone's question and your reply. And in those tiny cracks of time, you have the chance to reclaim your mind. One simple practice I use, the one breath reset. Anytime you feel yourself spinning, maybe your thoughts are racing, or you're in a heated conversation, or your brain's already planning dinner while you're still in a meeting, stop. Take one deep breath. Not 3, not 10, just one. Feel it come in. Feel it go out. That's it. It's like a mental bookmark that says, I'm here. I'm paying attention. The second practice, intentional transitions. You know how you can walk out of your home office at the end of the day and immediately snap at someone because your mind is still stuck on work? That's because you didn't reset. Build little rituals for shifting gears. It could be as simple as closing your laptop and saying out loud, work is done, or walking to the kitchen while focusing only on the sound of your footsteps. These little transitions aren't just nice. They protect your relationships, your energy, and your peace. Another way to stay grounded is to use your senses like anchors. Your mind can travel into the past or the future, but your senses are always in the now. Right now, what do you hear? What do you see? What can you feel under your fingertips? The next time your mind starts spiraling, don't try to wrestle it into silence. Just drop your attention into one sense at a time. You can't be fully in your senses and lost in your head at the same time. And listen, there's going to be resistance. Your mind is used to bouncing around like a ping pong ball. At first, presence will feel boring, even uncomfortable. You'll be halfway through washing the dishes and want to grab your phone just to check something real quick. That's not a sign you're failing. That's the sign you're retraining your brain. Every time you choose presence instead of distraction, you're literally rewiring yourself. The payoff. You start to notice life more vividly. You hear the warmth in someone's voice when they say hello. You taste your coffee instead of just gulping it down. You feel your own heartbeat when you're nervous instead of drowning in the noise of your thoughts. And those moments, they add up. They build a mind that's steady, a focus that's sharp, and an inner calm that doesn't break every time life throws something at you. Now, here's the kicker. Presence is contagious. People can feel it when you're actually with them instead of half scrolling through your phone. They trust you more. They open up more. They feel seen. And in a world full of people who are only half here, you instantly stand out by being fully here. So if you want to keep all the inner work you've been doing alive, the mindset shifts, the emotional redirection, the self-awareness, you've got to root it in daily practices of presence. And no, you don't have to wait for the perfect time or perfect setting. You just have to decide, in this moment, I choose to be here. Because when you start living that way, you realize something incredible. Every moment is an opportunity to transform, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you finally have it all figured out. Now, the life you want is built in the moments you choose to be awake for it. You know, here's the thing. Everything we've talked about up until now is just knowledge. And knowledge is useless unless you actually put it to work. You can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, highlight every single inspiring quote you find on Instagram. But if you don't get up tomorrow and do something differently, nothing changes. And I don't mean huge, dramatic, world-shaking actions. I mean the little, almost unnoticeable things that you repeat over and over until they compound. Because success, confidence, resilience, they're not built in the moments when you're already motivated. They're built in the moments when you don't feel like it, but you do it anyway. Here's the harsh truth. You will never feel ready. Waiting to feel ready is the fastest way to waste your life. The people you admire, the ones who've built something incredible, they didn't. So as you leave here, I don't want you thinking, okay, I'll get around to this someday when life's a little calmer. No, you start now. You start messy. You start unsure. You start even though you don't have all the answers. There's this myth that big transformations happen after some perfect lightning strike moment, but that's not how it works. Big transformations happen because you stacked up 1,000 tiny, unglamorous choices. You chose to have the conversation you were avoiding. You chose to put your phone down when it was stealing your attention. You chose to wake up 10 minutes earlier and take one breath before rushing into the day. Every single choice matters. Every single action is a brick in the foundation of the life you are building. The question is, what kind of life are you building with the bricks you're laying today? And look, you will mess up. You will fall off track. You will go days, maybe even weeks, forgetting to do the very things we've talked about. That's not failure. That's part of the process. The difference between people who change their lives and people who stay stuck isn't that one group never falls. It's that when they fall, they get back up faster. This is why you have to stop making your future self this imaginary superhero who will handle everything later. You're the superhero. And the cape isn't coming in the mail. If you want more focus, you practice focus today. If you want to stop overthinking, you catch yourself and shift your thoughts today. And if you want to feel more present, you take that one breath reset today and you repeat it tomorrow and the day after that. Here's a powerful truth most people overlook. Your future is not some mystery waiting to be revealed. It's a math problem. Your future is simply the sum of what you choose to do or not do every single day. So imagine for a second, what if you really committed to this? What if, starting today, you decided that no matter how small the action, you're going to show up for yourself every day for the next 12 months? What kind of person would you be a year from now? What kind of life would you wake up in? I'll tell you what would happen. You'd shock yourself. You'd start recognizing the person in the mirror again. You'd start trusting yourself again. You'd stop doubting whether you can handle life and start knowing that you can. And that's the whole point. This isn't just about being more mindful or breaking free from anxious loops or learning how to redirect your thoughts. It's about remembering that you have far more power than you think. It's about taking that power and putting it into action now. So as we wrap this up, I want you to pick one thing, just one, from everything we've talked about today. One practice, one shift, one decision you're going to make starting today. Don't pick 10. Don't try to overhaul your whole life overnight. Just choose one. Do it every day. Watch what happens. Because the secret no one tells you is this: massive change is just small change multiplied by time. And the only time you ever get to start is now. So stop waiting, stop overthinking, stop talking yourself out of the life you want. You're here. You're breathing. You've got everything you need to begin. The next chapter of your life is waiting for you, and the pen is already in your hand.